Thank you, Cahira. Can I thank the Cancorla's office for selecting this topic today. It's an extremely important topic, and I suppose it's very topical at the moment, given the Minister's announcement last week to postpone the implementation of the new model of allocation of resource hours and learning support. And that announcement has created a lot of worry and a lot of anxiety for a number of people, Minister. And I acknowledge that it's important that we get this right. And I want to highlight the fact that my colleague, Deputy Colm Keaveney, has previously sought to highlight a number of the concerns we had on this side of the House in relation to the new model as proposed. And it is important, as I said, that we get this right. There is a lot of inconsistencies in the current scheme in relation to the learning supports, which is just allocated to the school, and it's at the school's discretion what children do get those specified hours. And then the resource allocation, we have situations where children are waiting anything up to 2 years for a diagnosis. So it's important that it is tweaked and got right. But, Minister, we have to be reflective of the true realities of what's going on out there. And when you think of the ESPN Act of 2004, in which it stipulates that a child with special educational needs shall be educated in an inclusive environment with children who do not have such needs. Minister, your senior minister recently addressed the IPPN annual conference, and she used a quotation: "I could be anything at all with half the chance, but today I'm going to change the world." Does she realise that is also the ambition of Down Syndrome Ireland? And she also spoke about at that conference about research showing that early intervention is often the key to improving educational outcomes. And she also said that, "I know that children's education is about much more than reading and writing." Minister, Down Syndrome Ireland are extremely concerned at the proposed delay. And I understand the Minister may have even been meeting Down Syndrome Ireland today. But I met with representatives, parents in my own constituency during the week. And they said their child's diagnosis, they spoke quite emotionally and quite frankly about the experiences that they're experiencing currently. One of them said, "Diagnosis is mild. I should be rejoicing and celebrating. My glass is half full. My daughter has a chance. She has good cognitive scores. They tell me this means she has a good IQ. She's an exceptional child, went through junior infants, senior infants and first class with no learning support and no resource teaching. Her teachers over the years consistently say that Anna brings a very positive dimension to the class, but now she has developed emotional and behavioural issues, and it is only when she did poorly in a stay-in test at the end of the first class that she qualified for limited learning support this year. She needs extra help, and she needs it now, but unfortunately she is not getting it." I met another woman, Mary, whose son, and these are only names I'm given not to reveal the identity, said his diagnosis changed from mild to moderate. He has moved from his local national school, which could not meet its needs, to a special school which is outside his community. Emily, whose daughter is 3.5, has just been given a mild, even though she has significant speech delay. She is non-verbal, and her mother is extremely concerned and worried, and she feels that she's been punished for the fact that she has given so much support to her child, so she did get a mild diagnosis. Can I ask 2 questions, Cahirla, and I'll finish on this? Will, in the period when you're reviewing this scheme, will you straight away abolish the misconceived label of mild learning disability for Down syndrome children? This is a well-recognised medical condition with multiple disabilities and is recognised as an intellectual disability. And secondly, the system at present is flawed. Down syndrome children are not treated equally. A child with Asperger's and a high IQ is eligible for resource hours, and that is right and proper. But surely this should be the same for a child with Down syndrome who is deemed ineligible if their IQ is in the mild learning disability range. There needs to be equality and there needs to be fairness.
Thanks, Deputy. Minister Damien English, and the Minister has 4 minutes.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, I want to give my apologies, or give Minister Janet Sullivan's apologies. She'd hoped to be here. I should appreciate with the change in her times, it just clashed with something else that she couldn't be here. So I will give this statement on her behalf. And just to say she's sorry she wasn't here, because it is a very important issue to both her and to the Department as well. I would like to thank Deputy for raising this matter. I wish to advise Deputy Try that under the existing allocation systems, all pupils with Down syndrome, including such pupils in the mile range, currently are entitled to receive additional teaching support. Such support is provided either from a school's allocation of learning support or resource teaching under the general allocation model, or from an allocation of additional resource teacher hours allocated to schools by the NCSE. It should be noted that whether resource teaching hours are allocated to schools under the general allocation model or through an allocation made by the NCSE based on an individual basis or of low incidence special needs, it is a matter for schools to utilise and manage those resources to best provide the teaching needs of qualifying children. Each school will use its professional judgment to decide how the provision of additional resource teaching time and hours is made to qualifying pupils in the school to ensure that all their individual needs are met. Schools have discretion as to how they allocate their general allocation hours to pupils. Whereas schools will have regard to the number of pupils who require additional teaching support in their school, they are not constrained as to the number of hours that they may allocate to a pupil who may have Down syndrome and who may be in the mild range. And I think that's an important clarification because there's some confusion out there. But just to say that I've also met a lot of parents in this area as well. I think that you're right that they're, you know, they do need a change system to be able to make sure that they get exactly the services they need. Schools are encouraged to allocate hours to pupils taking into account the extent of their individual learning needs. Schools may also increase the amount of additional teaching time they provide to pupils by using a combination of individualised teaching time along with pair and group work. The NCSE were asked to provide policy advice on the issue of whether Down syndrome should be reclassified as a low-incidence disability in all instances, regardless of assessed cognitive ability. In its policy advice, the NCSE stated that it could not establish an evidence base to support a recommendation that a child with Down syndrome should be allocated supports over and above other children with mild learning disabilities, or children with other syndromes that also have associated co-occurring conditions. However, the NCSE also recommended that under a new resource allocation model proposed by the NCSE, children should be allocated additional resources in line with the level of need rather than by disability category. And that's probably the issue you're raising here today as well, and their recommendations. Deputy Try will be aware that Minister Sullivan announced last week that she intends to retain the current model for allocating resource and learning support teachers to schools for the coming year, in order to ensure that sufficient time should be allowed for further consultation to take place with education stakeholders and in order to address a number of outstanding issues before the new model is implemented in schools. And it is an issue, and I think you've said yourself that the proposal wasn't perfect either and still needed some clarification, some tweaking. There was concerns raised on both sides, people who had concerns about it, but also those who wanted to have it brought in as quickly as possible as well. So it's a balancing act to get it right. And in your own few words, you've said it's important to get it right, and I would share that view as well as Home Minister, that we have to get it right, but certainly not to put it off indefinitely. But it wasn't possible because, you know, it would need to have been implemented last week for it to be able to be used for this year, for the coming term as well. Minister Sullivan has informed me that some parents and organisations representing children with Down syndrome continue to have concerns that the existing system does not give them certainty as to the number of resource teaching hours that may be allocated to their child under the general allocation model, as these hours are distributed locally by schools. So she will take into account these views, and she will listen to the position that parents and representative organisations have put forward regarding this matter. And to clarify, yes, Minister Sullivan did meet with Down syndrome Ireland this morning, along with some parents as well. And so it was an opportunity for her to discuss the concerns that they're having this issue, and she intends to meet with more parents over the coming weeks as well to try and tease this out and talk more about it as well. So I'll make sure that she considers all the issues you raised here today, and with the questions and suggestions you have definitely tried, because I think it is a very important issue. It's something that I think we all want to see corrected and got right, but there's no point in rushing in the model for all the evidence we need, all the information we need. It's not there to actually get it right, and I think you'll agree with that, but it's important. But I think the message needs to go out that the system is not being put off indefinitely. It's just a matter of tweaking and getting it right, and it'll be in there, but it wasn't possible for September coming.
Thanks, Minister. Deputy Try, you have 2 minutes for supplementary.
The message is, Minister, you are reconfiguring the system, and that is right. But also it is critically important that people who need additional supports get it now, because 12 months to a child of 2, 3 or 4 years of age or even older is a very, very significant and long period of time that they could possibly be going without the necessary supports that they need. And when you think back, and you said in your reply, Minister, schools have the discretion. And that's where the big difficulty is here in terms of the learning supports hours and the resource hours, that there's discretion there at the school, and it's up to the school. And one of the parents who wrote a letter said, these supports are provided as part of the school's general allocation. My son is basically under a complement to that system, and we pray that some bureaucrat doesn't change the school's budget, which could take these resources away with the stroke of a pen. That's what's happening, and that's the fear and that's the anxiety that's out there. And the simple truth of the matter is, Down syndrome as a condition is diagnosed at birth, and it affects people's speech, it affects their coordination, it affects their hearing, it affects their cognitive skills. And what is happening now, Minister, people who are diagnosed with a mild degree, they are being discriminated against, and they're saying they're not bad enough. So, as I said already, there's parents out there who invested a lot of time, a lot of effort and a lot of resources to support their children before they go in for these tests, and because they're being diagnosed as mild, they're being discriminated against. I think that needs to be reviewed in light of the evidence that's coming forward from parents. And can I finish off by saying what a parent said to me? Education, as we all know, is the building blocks that give all children, with or without a disability, the skills they need later in life. Yet the current system is allowing a small section of children to be denied the extra resources they need to gain and develop these same self-skills. Give our children a fighting chance and leave them and us, our parents, with dignity. Don't turn us into beggars, pleading with civil servants for what our children need. Let us enjoy our children just as we do their siblings, without the constant worry about their education. We know they have a disability. We live with it every day. You don't need to constantly remind us of their condition by making us grovel and stress. Minister, I know you and the Minister are genuine about your concerns in this area. What I would say is listen to Down Syndrome Ireland. Our Deputy McGrath brought forward a bill on a Friday sitting here in relation to recognising Down syndrome as a low incidence disorder. It wasn't opposed by the government, it was supported by all members in the House. Let's get on, let's do it, because every month, every week that delays is very, very difficult for the children who have this disability. Thank you.
Thanks, Minister. Thanks, Deputy Minister. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Deputy Troy, and certainly I'll bring all the wishes to the Minister, and we'll have this conversation with her. I think everybody in this House wants to see this whole area changed, and the NCSE have put forward a recommendation which I think will be right, and it will make sure that under that new allocation model that resources will be allocated based on children's need and their level of need, not their category, not their disability, which is what we want to achieve here. And I think that's what Minister Sullivan wants to do. She did meet Down Syndrome Ireland this morning, as I said, and it will take on board, and it's going to be more parents as well. You've read out there some very good explanation from parents of how they feel and what they're up against. We've also had some good, I think, a look in through Brendan O'Connor's article over the last 2 weeks as well. I very clearly paint the picture for everybody here exactly how difficult it is to get the resources they need. So I think we all know this model has to change, but I think you even said it yourself, we have to get it right. And the Minister felt very strongly that rushing it through in the last month wasn't going to work, because all the evidence that was needed to make sure it was right wasn't there, and it's across the 2 different departments. So we have to get it right, and we have to stick to that. The issue then in relation to what can we do in the meantime, that's something I'll bring back to her and see is that can be done while we're waiting to change the model, right? Because that's what you're trying to say as well. It's a kind of a short-term solution as well. The bill that wasn't opposed by the government from your colleague. The issue there is that the NCSE, who are generally the ones who give the policy advice on this, they don't agree with that, and they have said that their issue, what they're saying is that they were asked to provide the policy on this, and they say that they could establish an evidence base to support a recommendation that a child with Down syndrome should be allocated support over and above other children with mild learning disabilities. So we have an issue there on them, but they are proposing a new model which will probably give us the same solution. So we have to try to join the dots here and see what we can do. But I'll bring it back to Minister Sullivan, and I'll make sure that she contacts you with it as well. And I know that it's genuine you're bringing this up, and so it's met with genuine on this side as well, that we'll try to get this out.
Thanks, Minister.